Reprints have always been an interesting topic of discussion because it gets talked about pretty much 24/7. People are always talking about reprints, especially in markets like these when prices are super expensive out the gate. Everybody just talks about future reprints. Obviously, when we talk about these things, it's all just speculation, and that's what I want to get to. So, when people talk about reprints, a lot of the times, especially now, people talk about surging sparks because surging sparks is really expensive out the gate. And people like to say that Surging Sparks is going to get this huge reprint and whatnot. Obviously, it's all just speculation. But I find this to be sort of interesting that a lot of people say that, Surging Sparks is going to get this big reprint. But for some reason, when you talk about specialty sets like 151 or Prismatic Evolutions, all of a sudden, big reprints are not going to affect the prices because people said this with 151 that, these reprints aren't going to matter. 151 is super popular, and we've kind of seen that with all these restocks we get, and all these just products that get brought up in Walmart, Costco. They've all gotten eaten up, and it didn't really affect the prices of 151 that much. So I guess it was sort of true with 151 that we got a lot of these products in at Walmart, at retail. They're still showing up, and it's not really doing too much to the prices. Obviously, we have this Blooming Waters collection box that's going to come out. We'll see how that affects the prices of products and how much supply is really going to be out there, but we really don't know. And the same thing is happening to Prismatic Evolutions. Prismatic Evolutions is even more crazy than 151, and people are saying that even if this gets reprinted a ton, that it's not going to matter. It's not going to affect the prices because there's a lot of demand. And people have only really talked about this with 151 in Prismatic Evolutions, with reprints not going to affect the prices at all, that it doesn't matter how much they print, it's just going to go up. And that's what everybody is saying about these. But all of a sudden, you bring up Surging Sparks, people say it's going to affect the prices. Now, I find this to be sort of interesting because, we've all seen in history that specialty sets tend to get reprinted a lot. And with 151, we saw, prices not really actually do much with all these restocks from Costco and, all these places. They didn't really affect the prices too much. Obviously, like I said, we have the Blooming Waters collection box. We'll see if that does anything. But yeah, it's been always sort of interesting. And with Prismatic Evolutions being this expensive out the gate, way more expensive than 151 out the gate, it will be interesting to see if it sort of follows the same suit as 151, where we get a lot of products and they don't really affect the prices that much. We'll have to see because Prismatic is definitely way more hyped up than 151, and prices being this expensive, I can't imagine that Pokemon will not reprint this thing a good amount. And yeah, it's so hard to really tell if big reprints are going to happen, and if they do happen, what's going to happen to prices. That's why this whole reprint talk is all just speculation. But I've just noticed so much more that when we talk about reprints, people with specialty sets like to say, especially with the ones now, Prismatic 151, people like to say that it's never going to affect the prices because there's too much demand. But how about Surging Sparks? Because when people talk about Surging Sparks, it seems like all of a sudden, reprints are going to crash the prices. It's very strange to me, and especially when you see the demand of Surging Sparks. Like, it's cooled off a little bit in the past week, but even before this, 100 boxes was selling every single day just on TCG Player. So it's not like Surging Sparks isn't hyped up at all. It's a very popular set. So even if a big reprint does happen, what's going to happen to the prices? Are they going to stay the same? Are they going to go down? It's we don't really know. And this whole talk about big reprints, we don't even know if that's happening because, in the past, we've seen sets get reprinted, such as Paldea Evolved, and Obsidian Flames. They recently got reprinted, restocked, whatever you want to call it. But they did nothing to the prices, really. They maybe dropped, $10, $15? They weren't really big reprints. And that's the whole thing I want to get to in this video, is talk about this whole thing with big reprints. Why is it just Surging Sparks that gets brought up with big reprints? Obviously, this is the first booster box we've seen go above $200 this quickly in, Scarlet and Violet, which is why people think it's going to get this big reprint. But what if it doesn't happen? Because, I think people think about, the times back in Sword and Shield when we saw Chilling Reign, Fusion Strike hit $80 after being reprinted. We saw Lost Origin, Silver Tempest really drop. But so far as it seems in Scarlet and Violet, even for, specialty sets like 151, we saw a lot of products, but at the same time, the prices didn't really get affected much. So even with Surging Sparks, let's say it's a decent sized reprint with the booster boxes, I feel like maybe the boxes drop, 170, 160. I think it would probably drop at most to MSRP, But that's sort of it. And that's if a decent sized reprint happens. Because, like, for example, we saw this one day, right? When the booster boxes, like, they got, like, dropped. Like, around, like, here, when the sale was, like, crazy for them. Like, there was a seller that had them for, like, 180. They got sold out in, like, what, an hour? So this whole idea that these are going to just instantly drop or this big reprints happen, it's just so much speculation. And that's why this whole talk about reprints and everything, we don't know. And that's just a simple fact. And when people like talk about all these big reprints and stuff, we just simply, it's all just speculation. And with Surging Sparks being the most, hyped up and popular main set, I mean, if this doesn't get a big reprint, I think we could see these prices like grow a lot. Because, yeah, the prices and haven't really gone up recently because it's been just sort of stagnant. I think a lot of people have flipped these, so there is a lot of supply on the market. It is sort of surprising that we're not really seeing a ton of growth with Surging Sparks, but until a reprint, I guess, gets announced or something like that, I think these prices are going to start moving here sort of soon because they've been just stagnant for so long and so many products of Surging Sparks still get sold every single day that I think it's just a matter of time before these go up. And if we don't get a reprint anytime soon, I think they're going to go up. And even, when it goes up and a reprint does get announced, I don't think it's going to crash like a lot of people are saying. And we just don't know how big the reprint is going to be. It's just, that's just the simple fact. Because everybody talks about big reprints, but we just haven't seen that. In this whole talk about reprints, it's like, I feel like there's so many sets that Pokemon is printing in the future. And we all kind of know this, that how much are they going to reprint of every single set? It's kind of just, the whole reprint talk, it's sort of just, I don't know. It's hard to really talk about because it's all speculation. And reprints in Scarlet and Violet just seem to not really be there. Like, they're not printing things into the ground anymore. But hey, maybe Surging Spark, since it is an outlier set, maybe they reprint into the ground. But it just doesn't seem like Pokemon is doing that. I feel like Pokemon's a lot smarter. Even with these, outlier sets like Surging Sparks that do go up really quickly in price, I don't think Pokemon's going to print things into the ground anymore. Maybe they'll print some, maybe the prices will drop a little bit. But the big reprint thing, I think, is kind of blown out of proportion because we just haven't seen it yet. And I just don't think that sort of thing is really going to happen. And when you look at the prices of the cards, this is definitely an LR set. I know a lot of people say Surging Sparks is overhyped and all that, but when you look at the artworks of the set and the prices compared to everything else, Surging Sparks is definitely one of, pretty much the best main set we've seen so far in Scarlet and Violet. And will there be, main sets in the future that maybe will do better than Surging Sparks? Maybe, but I think as of right now, this being the 8th main set, even the ones in the future that come out, I think Surging Sparks is always going to be up there with the top. And just Surging Sparks, in my opinion, it gets so much hate to the point where I really feel like all the hate, it's sort of just, I don't know. I feel like it comes from people that maybe somewhat, maybe missed out or whatever, because Surging Sparks, when you really look at the set and the amount of the demand, there's a lot of it. And just the whole big reprint talk, I don't know. I feel like it's really blown out of proportion, and, it's just all speculation at the end of the day. So we will have to see if this gets a huge reprint or not in the future. We just don't know. And obviously people have said that, the earliest that we're going to know of some sort of reprint, I think is like February or something. But this being only like a month old, I can't really see this getting reprinted in like February. Like, there's so many other sets out there that haven't gotten reprinted yet. I don't know if they would just skip all those and go to Surging Sparks. I'm not really sure. But yeah, just reprints, it's kind of just hard to talk about because it's literally just all guessing. So yeah, just want to talk about this reprint thing because I just see it get talked about so much with Surging, but not with other things. And people just seem to think that this is going to happen, but we just really don't know. So that's what I want to talk about today. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one.